If you have ever been in something where you cannot tell if you are wanted or just tolerated, if you feel a rush when they finally show up and a collapse when they disappear, if you keep asking yourself what you are to them and you keep accepting answers that are not answers, this episode is for you. Because being treated like an option is not always obvious. It rarely looks like cruelty at first. It often looks like chemistry. It looks like intensity in moments. It looks like sweet words. It looks like, "I miss you," paired with a calendar that never makes space for you. And the reason it is so hard to see is because the anxious system is built to convert small signals into proof. It will take unstable connection over no connection. It will take potential over pattern. And avoidant patterns, especially when someone is emotionally unavailable, can create exactly the kind of environment where you stay in hope while your needs get postponed indefinitely. So today, I want to give you a clean way to know if you are only an option, why your brain stays attached even when the evidence is loud, what avoidant and anxious dynamics do to keep this contract alive, and the structure that ends it without you becoming cold, chaotic, or reactive. Let's start with the nervous system truth that people miss. You do not become anxious only because you are anxious. You become anxious because your environment teaches your system that tracking is necessary. Tracking is scanning. Tracking is monitoring. Tracking is reading signals to predict what comes next. In stable relationships, tracking turns off over time because the environment does not require it. In unstable relationships, tracking intensifies over time. That is the diagnostic. A healthy bond reduces nervous system activation over time. An unhealthy bond increases it. So one of the first ways you know you are an option is that the more you invest, the less you can relax. You become more vigilant, not more settled. You start monitoring their tone. You start hesitating before texting. You start rehearsing what you will say. You start feeling relief when they reply and a drop when they don't. That is not romance. That is regulation. And the reason it happens is because when you are an option, the relationship is run on access, not on commitment. Access means you can be reached when it suits them. Commitment means your presence is accounted for. Access is sporadic. Commitment is structured. So the first sign is inconsistent availability that is not repaired. People confuse this, so I'm going to make it clean. Everyone can be busy. Everyone can have a hard week. Everyone can need space. But in a secure bond, distance comes with communication and repair. In being an option, distance comes with excuses and resets. They disappear. Then they return like nothing happened. They go quiet. Then they pop back in with sweetness. They give you intensity. Then they vanish. And you are expected to accept the return without asking for repair, because asking for repair makes you pressure. That is the contract. If you want access to me, you must be low maintenance. If you want closeness, you must not ask for clarity. If you want commitment, you must not create pressure. If you want reassurance, you must earn it. If you want repair, you must wait until I'm ready. If you want consistency, you must accept inconsistency as temporary. That contract is silent, but it runs everything. And if you have been living under that contract, you will feel it in your body as vigilance. Now, let's talk about a second sign that is even more deceptive. The relationship progresses in emotion, but not in structure. This is where people get trapped for months or years. You might have deep conversations. They might open up about trauma. They might be affectionate. They might share vulnerability in flashes. And your brain reads that as intimacy, so you assume there is a relationship forming. But structure does not follow. There is no consistent rhythm. There are no clear plans. There is no mutual effort. The future stays vague. The labels stay avoided. Accountability stays missing. So you have emotional closeness without relational security. And that combination trains anxious attachment like nothing else, because the anxious system confuses emotional access with relational investment. Emotional access can be real and still not be sustainable. Patterns matter more than moments. Moments are how you get attached. Patterns are how you stay safe. Now, here is a third sign, and it is one of the clearest. Your needs become negotiations instead of information. When you are chosen, your needs create intimacy. They create adjustment. They create teamwork. When you are an option, your needs create distance. When you ask for basic predictability, you are labeled as too much. When you ask for clarity, you are labeled as pressure. When you ask for repair, you are told you are overthinking. When you express hurt, they reset with sweetness instead of repair. This is an important distinction. Sweetness is not repair. Sweetness is a reset. Repair is ownership plus change. Reset is charm plus forgetfulness. And option dynamics are built on resets, because resets restore access without requiring growth. Now, let's name the fourth sign. You are only included in their life when it is convenient, not when it is meaningful. This is where you feel it in your gut. You get the late-night calls, but not the Saturday plans. You get the private intimacy, but not the public consistency. You get the emotional confession, but not the follow-through. You get the "I miss you," but not the "I'm seeing you." And your nervous system notices this, even if your mind keeps making excuses. The body always knows whether you are accounted for. Being accounted for is a calming signal. Being optional is an activating signal. Now, I want you to notice something. Most people think being an option means the person does not care. That is not always true. Some people keep you as an option because they care, but they cannot tolerate the requirements of a real bond. Some keep you as an option because they like access without responsibility. Some keep you as an option because they are conflict avoidant and they do not want the discomfort of a clean ending. Different motivations, same contract. And the contract is what matters, because you are not living inside their intention. You are living inside their pattern. Now, let's go deeper into the avoidant anxious mechanism underneath this, because once you see it, you stop personalizing and you stop negotiating with crumbs. Avoidant systems often experience closeness as pressure, exposure, and a countdown. Not because they are evil, because closeness activates fear, and fear activates control behavior. Control behavior can be silence, vagueness, distraction, disappearing after intimacy, shifting tone, making plans and not following through, giving you enough to keep you from leaving, but not enough to require full showing up. Their system is trying to touch connection without feeling trapped by expectation. And anxious systems experience closeness as relief, warmth, direction. So the anxious person starts paying for access with their nervous system. They track, they scan, they overfunction, and sometimes it works. They get the reply, they get the warmth, they get the reassurance. So the brain learns a rule. When I scan harder, I can prevent loss. That rule creates obsessive thinking, checking behavior, and the urge to send the text to clarify, fix, prove, or soothe. And then you start telling yourself you are the problem because you cannot calm down. But the environment is demanding that you stay alert. Your nervous system is responding accurately to an unstable rhythm. Now, here is the part that changes everything. In option dynamics, the nervous system becomes the currency. You pay with anxiety to buy closeness. You pay with self-abandonment to buy access. You pay with silence about your needs to buy a moment of peace. That is why it feels exhausting. You are financing the relationship with your regulation. And this is also why it becomes addictive, because once you pay, you want the investment to become meaningful. The more you pay, the more your mind insists it must be worth it. So you keep paying. You keep understanding. You keep translating their behavior into a story that lets you stay. They're stressed. They're healing. They have trauma. They're avoidant. They need time. And sometimes those stories are true, but stories are not the test. Patterns are the test. Now, let's get very specific, because you asked for a way to know, not a vibe. Here are the pattern-based signs that you are an option, and I want you to listen like a scientist, not like a romantic. 1. Plans are vague, late, or constantly rescheduled, and there is no repair. 2. You feel you must be easy to keep them, and you censor your needs. 3. You receive intensity in bursts and distance in stretches. 4. Clarity is treated like pressure. 5. After closeness, they pull away, and you are expected to pretend you do not notice. 6. Their effort increases when you withdraw, and decreases when you come close. 7. They keep doors open with tiny signals instead of real movement. Those tiny signals are called proximity without consequence. A like, a story view, a random hello, a late-night message, a casual check-in. And the reason those signals are so dangerous is because they produce hope without producing structure. They keep your nervous system engaged without giving it a home. Now, I want to name the psychology of those tiny signals, because this is how people lose years. Tiny signals work like a slot machine. You do not know when they will appear, so your brain starts scanning for them. And when one appears, you get a hit of relief. Relief becomes the chemical marker that says, "This matters." Then your brain wants more relief. That is why mixed signals are not a puzzle. They are a training environment. Whatever you reward will multiply. If you reward attention, you get more inconsistency. If you reward consistency, you get either a real return or a clean ending. Both outcomes protect you. So if you want to stop being an option, you have to stop making the pattern work. That is the leverage. It is not punishment. It is mechanics. Patterns repeat because they work. People do not keep patterns because they are bad people. They keep patterns because the patterns get them what they want. Space without losing you. Comfort without accountability. Connection without consequence. And as long as you keep paying full price for part-time behavior, the pattern stays profitable. Now, this is where anxious attachment usually panics. It hears "stop rewarding," and it interprets that as "withdraw love." That is not what I am saying. You are not withholding love. You are telling the truth with your behavior. Your attention is valuable. Your intimacy is valuable. Your availability is valuable. If you give it away, regardless of how someone shows up, you teach them that your needs are optional. Then you wonder why your needs keep being postponed. So your job is alignment. You align access with behavior. Now, let's define what behavior earns access, because you need structure, not slogans. Consistency earns access. Repair earns access. Clear communication earns access. Follow-through earns access. And what does not earn access? Vague returns do not earn access. Silence does not earn access. Mixed signals do not earn full intimacy. Plans that never land do not earn full emotional investment. That is structure. Structure is not coldness. Structure is safety. Structure is the environment where an avoidant can choose you with less fear, because they are choosing into a stable system, not into chaos. And structure is also the environment where an anxious nervous system can stop scanning, because it finally has rules it can trust. Now, here is a question people ask when they finally see they are an option. What if I do this and I lose them? That fear is real. But here is the clean truth. If you lose someone because you required predictability and repair, you did not lose a stable bond. You lost a dynamic that required you to stay activated to keep it alive. You can hold a person for a long time, but you cannot feel loved while you are holding them. Love requires a free yes. A free yes shows up as sustained behavior, not as intense moments followed by absence, not as closeness you have to earn repeatedly, not as comfort that disappears when you need something. Now, I want you to hear the paradox that makes this whole thing solvable. The goal is not to guarantee their return. The goal is to guarantee your dignity and your nervous system stability. And paradoxically, that is the only environment where a real return can happen, because you are no longer participating in the contract that makes them comfortable while you bleed. When you stop overfunctioning, when you stop chasing, when you stop accepting vagueness, you create an environment where the person either steps up or falls away. Both outcomes give you truth. And truth calms the nervous system more than fantasy ever will. Now, let's give you a practical blueprint you can implement, because insight without a shift keeps you stuck. Step 1. Name the contract you have been living under. The contract might be, I accept unpredictability to keep connection, or I shrink my needs to avoid being labeled as pressure, or I work for reassurance instead of requiring it. Name it. Step 2. Define your standard in one sentence. Not a demand, a standard. A sentence that describes the environment you participate in. Something like, I only do relationships with consistent communication and repair. Or, I do not do hot and cold. Or, I require clarity and follow-through. Step 3. Implement one behavior change that aligns with that standard. This is where the leverage is. You stop filling silence. You stop sending follow-ups. You delay action when activated. You stop rewarding access without repair. Step 4. You watch what they do next, because what they do next is the truth. If they step into structure, you have something real to work with. If they resist structure, you have your answer. Now, I want to add one more piece that people rarely talk about, but it is a major reason option dynamics feel hypnotic. It is the identity hit. When someone keeps you as an option, your brain starts believing you need to prove you are choosable. So you perform. You try to be impressive. You try to be easy. You try to be irresistible. You try to be calm. You try to be the perfect version. And that performance becomes your new baseline. This is why you feel exhausted and not like yourself. You are living in a constant audition. Being chosen does not require an audition. Being chosen requires mutual investment. If you feel like you are constantly auditioning, you are not in a bond. You are in a system. And systems do not change because you perform better. Systems change when the reward schedule changes. Now, let's make the waiting piece clean, because this is where people get trapped. Waiting for someone to change is not the same as allowing time for growth. Allowing time for growth is conditional. It has standards. It has boundaries. It has a timeline. It has evidence of movement. Waiting for someone to change is unconditional. It has endless extensions. It has moving goalposts. It has you shrinking your needs to keep the bond alive. If you want to know which one you are doing, ask this. Do I have a clear definition of what change looks like, and am I seeing consistent movement toward it? If not, you are not in patience. You are in postponement. And postponement is where you lose yourself quietly. Now, I want to address grief. Because sometimes the reason you stay optional is not because you do not see the pattern. It is because letting go feels final. You are not only grieving them, you are grieving the imagined future. The imagined future is what keeps the loop alive. And closure means allowing the fantasy to end and then building your life anyway. Not in a rushed way, in a grounded way. That is real closure. And I want to give you the clean closing truth that you can carry. Being chosen is not a feeling. It is a pattern. If you want to know if you are only an option, stop listening to intensity and start watching structure. Watch what happens after closeness. Watch what happens when you express a need. Watch what happens after conflict. Watch whether repair exists. Watch whether their behavior becomes more consistent over time. Because a healthy bond reduces nervous system activation over time. An option dynamic increases it. And if the relationship cannot survive your steadiness, then it was never stable enough to hold you. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.